really pleased to see so many faces here, both familiar and new faces. So welcome. I am the co-founder and CEO of ClearPeople. You don't get to see me very often, but here I am. So today's topic, if we think about it, is very relevant to where we are, kind of on the cusp of an era that we've all read about. Some of us dreamt about, certainly ClearPeople. So it's very exciting, but it's also, how do you prepare for this? So we're really grateful that Stuart has taken his time out today to join us and share his perspectives from vision to reality on how to harness technology and gold standard knowledge to prepare for AI. Stuart Tait is a partner and Chief Technology Officer, Tax and Legal, KPMG UK. And from what I've seen and heard about you, very visionary in your thinking, strategic thinker, but also from some of the presentations you've given, a very employee and client-centric, which of course is key in terms of focusing on growth and for both KPMG, as well as providing a form of competitive advantage. So thank you, Stuart, for being here today.
Thanks very much for the introduction. As Katja said, I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Tax and Legal for KPMG in the UK, and I think to kind of get into a bit about the challenges that we were seeking to address when we first started working with ClearPeople and with Microsoft, it's worth kind of bearing in mind that we started this a number of years ago, before generative AI definitely was in the public consciousness like it is today. So we started out with just a focus on better knowledge management. So to get into kind of why we're thinking about better knowledge management, maybe a bit of context to the business. So as a tax and legal practice, we make money in two ways, broadly, to very simplify the business. But we've got compliance, so we're preparing and filing tax returns on behalf of our clients, whether they're individuals or whether they're corporates. And then we have an advisory business, which is effectively where, again, individuals or corporates are coming to KPMG with a very complex tax question that they would like us to address. Across both of those, content's really key. Even if we're just preparing a tax return, technical questions arise that need research so that our clients take the appropriate tax position and can back it up when challenged by the authorities. And across both of those businesses, then, I guess what we're really about is three things. It's people, it's content, and it's clients. So clients, clearly the most important thing in our business, but actually they're probably the bit that will take care of itself. If we have the best people, if we have the best content, we'll also get the best clients. So that's all well and good from a kind of a structural perspective. When we were looking at how we allocate our technology budget and actually how much resource we actually dedicate to our content, it was very little. Focus a lot on the people, get great people, they'll generate great content, which sounds very straightforward, but to actually use that content, we really need to invest in the infrastructure that we put around it. And that was important for a couple of reasons. One being that management of that content is so central to kind of operating effectively as an advisor. The other is that this was in the post-pandemic, very hybrid environment compared to where we are today, and that was actually disrupting how we train our advisors. So 90% of our training is meant to be on the job as advisors. You're meant to sit with someone else and kind of watch them do tax research and learn from how they do it. That wasn't possible over Teams in the same way. So we needed to put some more structure around the content to enable our advisors to operate effectively. The biggest one for me, I keep trying to drive home at KPMG, even though it's not how we traditionally view ourselves, is we are a content business. What people are coming to us for is the content, is the expertise on tax. So having kind of made the leap to thinking about ourselves as a content business, to think about how we harness that great work that those people are doing, we started to turn our minds to what would better content management look like. And I guess there's some of the challenges that we kind of thought of up on screen, but maybe just to give the voiceover to those. The first challenge we're trying to address is our content's very fractionalized. So as a tax professional, you might need access to legislation, guidance from HMRC, the case law, expert analysis. You might go to our own internal team and get their expert analysis on particular pieces of content. And they're all in different places. There's something like 10 different research portals that we have access to, which is quite a cumbersome experience for a tax advisor. And as a result, the content's not used as much as it should be. We're not kind of breaching any commercial confidences to share that we spend upwards of £2.5 million a year on licensing in content for the tax practice. We know that it's not accessed historically anywhere near the level we would like it to be, and that's because it's so diffuse. You have to go to so many different places to get it. The other issue, the iceberg challenge, we call it, is that actually, again, thinking about that kind of clients, people, content focus of our business, the best content that we create is the content that we create when a client pays us to answer a really difficult question. We put the biggest brains in KPMG on solving that client problem. The issue with that content historically was then once we've done it, once we've created it, we lock it away in a document management, a records retention tool, which is only really there to kind of cover us against future disputes. It's not designed to be accessible, and so it's not. A lot of the content is locked away in these repositories, not even accessible to our knowledge management team. And not easily searchable by anyone. That one is quite a that one's quite a personal issue for me, because when I was a graduate, so I started out as a tax advisor, not as a technologist, and in my third year roughly at KPMG, I was working together with some more senior members of the team on a very complex transaction. US headquartered company buying a company in Denmark, withholding companies in Ireland and Luxembourg, very, very complex structure. And we put months of work into helping them structure this deal, multiple nights working to 3 a.m. to get all the tax steps right and the implications of that structure clearly communicated to the client. Got towards the end of that process and sent it off to various different technical specialists in the firm to review and confirm that the technical content was correct. Got all the responses back, including one from a partner in the debt advisory part of the business, who said, "Look, all good from a content perspective. Like, yeah, you got it technically right. Great job, guys. Only question is, why didn't you just talk to me? Because I did exactly this deal about 6 months ago. I have all the analysis. I have the 200-page slide deck with all the steps. It was actually an identical Ireland, Luxembourg to another European country transaction. So you didn't need to do any of that work, any of the kind of 3 a.m. nights. You didn't need to bother with that. But it's impossible to find that out unless you've got your little black book of contacts and you can go and ask everyone what they've been doing. So that one is a particularly personal bugbear for me. And then the third element, which Kasia alluded to, is colleague experience. So again, keep coming back to people, content, clients. If we want to have the best people, we need to give them a fantastic experience of working at KPMG. It's very clear that our previous content management experience was not delivering that for them. All these different repositories, redoing work that could have been leveraged from elsewhere, and having to kind of jump around the organization to find the knowledge that they needed. So not a great experience. So I think the ask was that I outlined the vision and the challenges. So we've gone through challenges. Vision is quite a grand way of describing what we wanted to do. It was to solve all of those problems. So that's the vision, is none of those issues exist. But what, go maybe level below that, what we really wanted to do was have a single content repository with significantly better search than we had previously, to go across all of that different content. And we wanted to bring it to our users where they work every day, which in this hybrid environment means Teams. It doesn't mean multiple different internet sites. So that was the vision, really, was that kind of single source, where users can kind of find the content where they're at without having to jump through loads of hoops to find it. Obviously, I had no idea how to do that because we'd spend a lot of our time focused on tax technology, not knowledge management technology. But luckily, I knew I could reach out to Microsoft and ask how to do it. So we had some really good engagement with the Microsoft team, with Rich Bowes, the head of modern work for EMA, who's not here today, but and talked to kind of all the different technology that was coming online that would help us solve that problem. Talked about Viva Topics, about Syntex, SharePoint Premium now, and a few of the other different technologies that are coming on stream from Microsoft that would help us address that challenge. And they also introduced us to Gabriel and to ClearPeople as kind of implementation partners to solve that problem. And that's where we started working towards, I think internally, the name Super Search stuck. I was personally pushing for a Clippy for tax. You'd be working in a document and pop up and say, "Oh, it looks like you're trying to structure a Luxembourg tax transaction. Let me help you with that. Here's 7 that we've done before." But we've gone with Super Search because the person who holds the budget loves Super Search as a term. So we played to our stakeholders there. But that's what we were building with ClearPeople and Microsoft, was that content repository accessible through Teams, searchable, integrates all of our content together in one place. But we're also meant to talk about how that's preparing us for AI. So sort of 10 minutes into my presentation, I'll work my way around to the actual title and what I was meant to be talking about. So we were working on this. We've been working on it for about 2 years at this point now, and we've kind of gone down the road of piloting that content repository, and we're really pleased with the results that we had, looking at how we kind of roll it out more widely. Next, ChatGPT gets released. Suddenly, all anyone's asking me about is, what's your AI strategy? How are you going to respond to ChatGPT? Can pass, basic level accountancy exams. It's therefore definitely coming for our jobs. All those kinds of questions. So we revisited our AI strategy to think about where does generative AI fit in. And I guess the results of that analysis, as we kind of thought through the impact that the technology would have on our profession, is that the magic in any Gen AI solution is not the large language model. OpenAI, Google, Meta, open source models. There's loads of large language models out there. People are making their own. I think Deloitte have just built their own, called it Pair D, which is not a name I'd go for. But they've built their own large language model. So all of that capability is out there. What's really going to drive competitive advantage is having the content to feed to the language model. We're not going to generate competitive advantage with having access to electricity or water. We're going to do it from what we do with that and technology. And that's what comes to with the large language models. What's going to generate the advantage for KPMG is having a trusted, curated set of validated tax content that we can feed into a large language model through retrieval augmented generation, and therefore get grounded answers that relate to our domain, and that we can trust. That's going to be the differentiator for us compared to other firms. And to make that real, I've had this discussion with a lot of clients. I spoke to the head of head of tax at a large private equity firm, and she was telling me, the significance they place on this at the moment, and their advisors going on this journey with them, is based on their view that if they're in a competitive situation to close a deal, a last minute tax question comes up, and they can address that question quicker than their competitors in the deal, it'll be more likely that they'll close the deal rather than their competitor. So it's a genuinely significant issue with real world kind of commercial implications for our clients. Obviously for us, it means quicker advice delivered more cost effectively, and therefore more clients. But so that was kind of where we were aiming to get to, is this idea that we'd have the trusted content repository that we could point generative AI at, that would allow us to have trusted responses. But that will also then, I guess, only get us so far, because that's replicable. If it's all publicly available content, if it's all stuff from LexisNexis, then again, our competitors can build their own content repository. And they're at varying stages of that journey. I'd argue by building your own large language models first, you're putting yourself significantly behind. Probably better to use one that's kind of already available. But the next step, once you've done that, has to be looking at, well, how do you get proprietary content into that system, stuff that no one else can have access to, which for us means with the golden source that we talk about is we've now got our technical specialists working through the top 30 or 40 areas of tax where we feel that we can best take advantage of proprietary knowledge in the market, and where we've got the right expertise to be able to create content that no one else can create and have access to. And then again, working with Gabriel and the team to work out how we put that into our repository, so that again, people asking questions to our tax GPT, if that's what it becomes, are getting significantly better and kind of differentiated answers compared to what they get from any other technology. And obviously putting our advisors in that kind of prime position to deliver better advice quicker and more cheaply to our clients. So it was somewhat lucky that we had stumbled into having been building that repository already, and therefore we could turn back when we get in that question about what are you doing about generative AI, to say, well, actually, we've already been working on this for 2 years, so well ahead of the game. But I do think, the more I talk to clients and the more I talk to other organizations, that repository, curated, trusted content, organized in a safe way is going to be the key to kind of competing in the Gen AI world. And I was just sharing Gabriel, an example of when you don't do that. We do a lot with our tax content. We're also, we're trialing Copilot. We're doing all sorts of other things in our business at the moment. We're structuring and organizing the tax content. Our kind of Microsoft graph, I would not say that we as an organization have curated that in the way that we would have done if we'd known how useful it was going to be in future. Someone on my team asked me how to get a Power BI license the other day. I thought, rather than go and find a link and write an email, I'm just going to ask Copilot how to get a Power BI license. And they gave me a really good answer for if I was based at KPMG in New Zealand, a different firm to the UK firm. And that's I guess that's the result of not curating your data. If that had been a tax question as opposed to a relatively innocuous question like getting a Power BI license, that could potentially have serious consequences if we didn't have the robust review in place. So I think all of our focus is how do we build that domain-specific content library that's going to allow us to take advantage of the LLM technology to deliver better client advice.
So you'll see Stuart is going to come back towards the end. We also have Jason following me. Jason will step in and talk about some of the external sources, which I'll talk to now. So there's quite a few speakers here today, but don't worry, Stuart will be back because we know that he's the one we want to hear. Maybe a good point here to talk about delivering that gold standard, because this is something we've been working on for quite a long time. And as a concept, the platform we deliver, Atlas, that platform is really centered around knowledge. So as you're working, you are effectively creating knowledge all the time. It doesn't necessarily have to be highly curated knowledge, but it is knowledge nonetheless. So typically, most organizations, in fact, the vast majority of organizations, it looks, the picture looks something like this. You've got a little percentage, probably much smaller, showing here on this overview, on this diagram, and content that you really know a lot about, highly curated content. It'll be maybe 1% of your content if you're lucky. And this will be stuff such as best practices or precedents or policies that have gone through processes and have been validated and curated. And everything else, it's everything else. And that's why we get these questions. That's why Stuart was working on something for 3 to 6 months and someone said it was already there. Right? That is because we got this big blob of stuff sitting out there we don't really know enough about. So the challenge from our perspective is doing more with that knowledge that is already out there. And the way we think about it is to say, okay, well, logically, pragmatically speaking, there's actually a lot of stuff we can wrap something around. For instance, a project. We have a project code. We know who we're doing the project for, right? So surely we must be able to contextualize this and also curate it. It's not highly curated, it's still curated to a degree. And in fact, if we think about what Stuart said before, maybe some of that expertise documentation is sitting at this level. And therefore, let's make sure that it's highlighted. It could also be down here at the level of there is something out there from an external source. I think in KPMG's case, it's probably stored away in iManage, right? That particular deliverable is probably sitting in iManage. So it's out there somewhere, but what we need to do is we need to discover it and we need to make it accessible. And that's sort of this challenge that we are working with all the time. And it's, this slide deck here, then these few slides, they're actually not very new. We've been working on this challenge for a long time. Even before we went into the first version of Atlas, before that, this was the kind of thinking that we had as we tried to tackle this particular challenge in terms of understanding and getting these layers under control. And so, really trying to push down that undiscovered part and making it smaller and thinner over time. So where Atlas operates, our platform, the benefits of our platform is really all about these three layers here and trying to push that darker green further and further down. That's what the Atlas platform is there to do. So if we then think about, okay, how do we do that? Well, the platform itself, from a hygiene point, does a lot of stuff for you. It'll auto-curate. You will save something away somewhere into a specific panel, folder, subfolder, whatever, work in a SharePoint site or what have you. So you'll be working maybe inside a team, inside a meta area, or whatever it might be. And as you're working, it knows where you are, so you don't actually need to do much. It will just tag stuff up for you, right? But once we have dealt with that problem, there's actually more we can do. This is where we then leverage additional technology around us because we're sitting inside the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So there's other stuff we can leverage. And the platform opens up those possibilities and makes that possible in a very, very straightforward way. So you've got topics as an example. Not sure how many here in this room might have used topics. It has a purpose. You've got SharePoint Premium, Syntex. So these two technologies were the sort of the initial sort of catalyst for starting to work with KPMG because of the way we can leverage that in. But then when you start thinking about that problem of, okay, what about all that external content that we need to bring in? That's where our technology partnership with Open Being Insight is so strong, where we can leverage. Jason will talk about this, but I think it's more than 90. We've never done that, more than 90 connectors, right? But we could theoretically leverage more than 90 connectors, such as connectors to iManage. And that means this picture here starts becoming a very, very wholesome picture. It means that we can start, in truth, push this triangle, push that undiscovered part down further and further down. As long as we've got a connection to that content sitting outside of 365, we can actually start bringing that into context of where the user is working. And that was one of the big things we discussed with Stuart, that we want to create this super search experience. But certainly what we also want to do is we want the user not necessarily having to think about searching. One of the problems with search is it's a deliberate action. You've got to consider the fact, there's something, we probably got something out there. I should probably go think of it, search for it, right? So that's a very proactive thing that you have to do. You have to be very deliberate and you sort of need to know that it's there in order for you to be able to search for it. So what we do is we deliver these search experiences in context of where you are. So implicit search, whatever you want to call it, it's just bringing content to you in the context of where you are. So this year became known, and even in ClearPeople now we're starting to call it super search. I'm not sure we should. We're trademark it, but so super search is a thing now. The bomb hit about a year ago, and everybody went crazy. And Stuart said we'd obviously predicted this and worked on the whole, what are we going to do with the AI side of things? But actually, what we realized when all these things started to happen, what was the first thing people started talking about after they got over their initial shock and awe of ChatGPT, and they started thinking about using it for their own data, and some people started realizing, it's not actually looking at my data, even if I tell it to. People started thinking, okay, well, if I need to use this tag, I need to get my data in order. And what we realized was we had a platform already where that became that is a hygiene factor. And we'll come back to that in a bit. So very, very fast, and some of you may have seen this, I think within a month, so February or March last year, we launched the first version of prototype of our AI assistant. And of course, everybody has got an AI assistant, right? Everybody and their dog now are producing AI chatbots and chat experiences. It's not about that. It's about the data you're connecting into that experience. So we were very quickly sort of evolving from just being able to, basically have a standard ChatGPT experience in there, up against your own private open AI instance, to how are we going to make that work with data that's sitting in that. And that became our challenge in the last year, our sort of big, hairy, audacious goal. So from doing more with our knowledge, your knowledge, it's all about, we moved on to, okay, doing more with your knowledge while we're leveraging AI. And if we look at this picture then in a slightly different way, and we look at sort of maturity of data, I think most of us, like that triangle before, vast majority was below the curated. I think for most organizations, there are two realities. Most stuff sits outside of 365. Hands up if you've got everything in 365. Hey, funny enough, no one put their hand up. But, that's first.
Not sure.
You sure? So the reality is that most of our data is probably still outside of 365. But not only that, a lot of it will be file share. A lot of it will be, maybe if it is 365, it might be in OneDrive. The amount of data strategies I've seen where they say, we put everything in OneDrive. Like, why would you put everything in OneDrive? I don't understand. It doesn't matter. These are the realities. Data is sitting all sorts of places. In effect, we've got these silos of data, whether they're individual documents or folders or whatever it is in different systems. We got this thing on the left-hand side. We may have some information systems that start looking after this, and maybe some retention schedules. And, we got it under control, but we don't actually know that much about the data. And in some cases, we start creating knowledge, right? We start tagging it up. We start being able to use this information in context. And on the right-hand side, if we've done the knowledge part, we can maybe start creating connections between the data. And that's when it starts becoming interesting. So from an AI perspective, readiness, probably, huge surprise. On the left-hand side, your data is not very ready for AI. While on the right-hand side, your thumbs up. So typical use, file shares, SharePoint Online, Teams, would place you over there. I'm not saying it's rubbish. It's just not very well connected, right? And it's not necessarily ready for AI. On the right-hand side, obviously, when you're using Atlas, but you might just have really good information architecture and automation or whatever in place. But when you're using something like Atlas, actually, the hygiene factor is everything is tagged up. So you can start leveraging knowledge, and you can start creating these connected expertise, bundles of expertise. And we call that the AI sweet spot. You had already mentioned this term of anchoring. And that sweet spot is really where it becomes perfect for anchoring. So if we can start bringing content, start tagging it up automatically in knowledge, whether it sits in 365 or coming from where the majority of our data lives outside, and we can bring that in, we can bring that expert opinion document of 200 pages in, or even if it hasn't been highly curated, it can still be expertise. And if we take that a step further, because we have one more problem, right? Okay, let's say we do this for all our documentation. An organization like KPMG is huge, obviously, but even smaller organizations, so everybody else, right? We will have a lot of data. And having access to all that data is still going to be a problem from an AI perspective. Because if I'm thinking about it, in fact, Stuart, you mentioned something like this at some point we will discuss. But even from my perspective, we're tiny, tiny, tiny small compared to KPMG. I have got access to too much stuff. If I was asking AI to do something on my behalf, it's going to be able to see everything. What I want it to do is say, no, I'm doing something very specific now, and that's what I want you to answer me in the context. So even when we solve this particular problem, we've got one more thing we've got to solve. And this is where we started to introduce we were realizing this last year, and we introduced this concept that we call knowledge collections. And we launched the concept with Atlas 5 in November, December. And so knowledge collections is the ability to be able to wrap your arms around knowledge that's already in the system, already in Atlas. Create some definitions. It's not moving anywhere. You create some definitions here where you say, right, anything that is related to bids for the UK, anything that's related to research, tax, whatever research in the UK, I'm going to bundle up into a knowledge collection. And I'm going to make that knowledge collection available to the people that need it, right? So while that tax advisor might have access to a gazillion documents, when the tax advisor is doing some research for work, for a specific client, they will be asking a much smaller subset of data. They will be asking the AI against a much smaller subset of data. And this is key. And that's that gold standard that we're talking about. I think that's why the lines are yellow. Anything about that. Anyway, so this is the definition of our knowledge collection. And effectively, knowledge collections are these authoritative sources, trusted sources for AI. And practically speaking, using some Atlas terminology, what we do is we allow you to pinpoint as a knowledge owner, we allow you to say, okay, I'm creating a knowledge collection. I want it to look in one knowledge base or multiple knowledge bases. And then I want to apply some rules to that. For instance, I'm only going to use what we call our graded content. So it's been validated. I only want the stuff that is at gold level or silver level. And I only want stuff that matches certain tags. So gold graded, UK tax, whatever, right? Across these X number of knowledge collections, knowledge bases. And that becomes my knowledge collection. Great. So we did that. Works. And then we burned a lot of cash a single month when we tried this out. We burned a lot of cash. Single month. We got one more problem, right? Which is, this is all great, but we need to put a lot of controls in to really make sure that not only are we pinpointing the right data, and not only are we making it accessible to the right people that need it, but we need to put a lot of other controls in order for this not to spin out of control. Because you can, of course, an organization have multiple knowledge collections today. In our initial release, we support one. In a few months, you'll be able to have multiple of these. So what can you do with a knowledge collection? Well, it brings all these things together. But for each knowledge collection, you can define the sources, as I said. You can configure cost controls. So what cost controls do we have in place already, or should I say are available to us without this? Well, this all sits, by the way, in the background. It sits in Azure OpenAI. So for those that are sort of technically inclined, it means there's something called subscription and some resource groups, and you can put cost controls in there. But it's sort of like a sledgehammer, right? It's a one big cost control, one big budget. You can't really refine that any further. So what we're saying here is that you can put cost controls against each of these knowledge collections. Remember, the owner of this is a subject matter expert, a knowledge owner, whatever you want to call it, a business person. This is not IT. This is just someone that goes through a wizard and sets this up. You're not going to want them to go into Azure OpenAI, config, whatever interfaces. As a business user, all I need to say is, well, I'm going to target this knowledge connection against this particular audience. They're going to be able to do this many requests in a month. That means, hey, I've got an audience of 10,000. They can do 5 requests a month if they want to try it out. Or I've got a tiny small audience of super experts and they need to use this all the time. I'll give them more requests every month. So you can do that. You can select which LLM you want to use. One of the things we learned was that the cost that you burned that 1 month could have been 40 times less with another LLM, right? So choice of LLM is quite interesting. And then that's going to change all the time because the newest LLM is going to be the most expensive, blah, blah, blah. So that's not a huge surprise, but it's surprising how big the difference is, right? Configure the audience, as I said, and then configure the prompts. Why? Well, because you may have 2 different knowledge collections for serving 2 different purposes, 2 different types of tasks. One for the marketing team, help them help the marketing team maybe create business development materials, brochureware, or whatever it might be. Let's be a little bit creative. While the tax advisor, you probably wanted to say stuff like, hey, I did not find any documentation in order to support an answer, so I'm not going to answer anything, right? So you'll be able to do that on a knowledge collection. And so this is really where we've gotten to. Right? And I think Stuart will come back and talk about a little bit of the plans going forward. And you will be demonstrating some of this, Steve, in a little bit. But with that, I think maybe over to Jason.
So Jason, the Partner Alliance Director at Upland Insight. Jason is highly skilled enterprise search and AI specialist with nearly 2 decades experience. And I know this, and I can say this with true fantasy, that he is passionate about helping businesses worldwide harness the power of Microsoft AI.
I can't believe there's anybody in this room that has all of their content in a single content source. If there are, yeah, but I've just been sat next to him. I've seen him taking notes. Highly likely that you'll have content all around your organization. And what's happening now is that not only are you expanding into new applications, the type of content that you have and where you store is also changing. And why does this really matter? Well, what the biggest thing is that you do something called system hopping. I don't know why we've got hopping, but hoping, should I say? But what tends to happen is you go from here to there to here to there, hoping that you'll find the information that you're looking for. Well, this creates a number of problems. One, the time that you spend doing this, the different user experiences that you encounter as you go into these different applications. And I'll give you a couple of examples. You might have refiners on the left. You have a search bar at the top. You might not even have a search bar. You might have to hope that you can click through these folder levels. Everything is different, and that creates user frustration. You don't know if the information is out there, if it actually exists. So you go and you start the process again. You hop, you hope, you hop, you hope, you hop, you hope. You know it exists because the person who sits on your left or on your right, or the person you speak to on a Teams call says, that have you not got access to that application, Jason? But you can't get access to it because you don't have the correct security rights. And the information that you actually get back may be outdated, so you're not quite sure. You start asking questions about the information that you're receiving. Everything was going so well in traditional search. You'd type your keyword in, you'd use a refiner, you'd hopefully get the information back. But unfortunately, as Stuart and as Gabriel, and as we all know, 18 months ago, a set of clever individuals and teams created this thing called ChatGTP. They swallowed the internet. What that meant was that you could search for content about who is Michael Jordan, write me a poem about Manchester United, all of that stuff. But what you couldn't do is you couldn't ask questions of your data internally behind the firewall. And when you were playing with ChatGTP, what you were doing is you were creating more content. So if we went back to the original slide that we had before, you have content in many more different applications, and you're actually generating more content. Because when you ask it to write a poem, which we do every single day of our lives at work, or we want a one-pager about X, you're creating content. So that has to be stored somewhere. I was sat in a meeting several times. Actually, this has happened, and Skip, my colleague here, we have heard that enterprise search is dead. Worrying, because it's not. Because actually what goes on behind this idea of having content in all of these different applications is the ability and the need to search for that information. Because if you can't find that information, how are you going to perform generative actions on that content? What has changed ever so slightly is the way that you search. So I must hasten to add, there is still a need to search using keywords, because if you work in legal, you might want to search for a client name or a matter name or a particular set of information. There's no point in typing a human language query and saying, show me information about client number 1. That's not helping you. What that's actually doing is just wasting your time if you're keying something in. And when Stu was talking before, I actually heard him use the example of, and this actually exemplifies why search is changing, because when you were working on that opportunity in Denmark, you said, if we could only type in a search about tax and this proposal, look at the words that he was using there to search for information. He wasn't just typing in tax proposal. He was typing in a human language question, asking for the information back. So it's just taking on a different form. And 97%, according to Forrester and Grammarly, 97% of organizations by 2025 will invest in some way, shape, or form in AI. Now, as we all know, 99.9321169 of all statistics are made up. But what worries me about this statistic in particular is what are the other 3% of organizations doing? And even if it's not that high of a number, and it's say 75% of organizations, that's still a blooming large number, people. But there are clearly AI risks. There are clearly risks attached to AI. So, for example, we've come to understand this idea of ambiguity and hallucination. So the information that I'm getting back when I'm asking these questions, are they the right answers? And there's that ambiguity. And I'll give you a small idea. If I typed into any type of search, I arrived at the bank when crossing the river, or I arrived at the bank when I crossed the road. That idea of bank has 2 different meanings depending on the query that the sentence that I say. Now, it's about being able to understand the query that is being put in and avoiding that ambiguity. Now, clearly, when you look at the word bank and river and bank and road, you would make the assumption that it's a financial bank when I'm crossing the road versus a river bank when I'm crossing the river. But it's about understanding. So using bad or wrong or incomplete data is going to give you completely different experiences. Exposing secured data. This is very easy to do now because we've got this thing called copy and paste, or Clippy if you are Stuart. And what we can do is you can take information from one location, copy it into another location, and before you know it, I'm sharing all my financial information with Stuart and with Gabriel, or I'm sharing some personal information with Steve, and that is a serious problem within organizations. And this is where Purview would come in. I'll just drop that little name in there for you if you are working in a Microsoft environment. It's the lack of transparency about who's doing what and when. So you need to have some kind of analytics about what people are doing to record that information. And also, when you're recording analytics about what people are doing, you can use that to improve what they're experiencing going forward. An oversight. We do sometimes get caught up in this idea of, technology is the greatest thing in the world and it's going to solve all of our problems. But make sure that you apply a use case to the technology that you're looking to do, because there's lots and lots of applications out there, AI applications out there, and make sure that they are productized rather than somebody writing lines of code in dark rooms in crazy places around the world, because products are going to get you there quicker. And it's also about the last one, incomplete in-market solutions. So it's very much a crowded market in the AI world at the moment. It's researching, understanding what are the best applications to solve your business case. Please don't go with something that's just been written on the back of a cigarette packet. Those things exist these days. So how can we help? So what we do here is we take information from loads of different applications around the organization. And these are just 3 examples. We have 97 different connectors that enable you to take content from those different applications and add it into a search index. This guy here is Azure AI Search. Microsoft do not help me because they changed the name of this on a regular basis. This used to be called Cognitive Search. It's now called Azure AI Search. And not only do we take the content of those application documents, we also take the metadata. This is what we were talking about before, because metadata is absolutely key when you're searching for information. We also take the security. If you remember before, going back to the point I made, that if you have access to the information you shouldn't have, then that's not quite right. And exposing that information when you are searching also is not quite right. So we take the security of the application where it resides at heart. We'll come back to vector search in a second, and we add it into a search index. Now, along the way, what we do is we chunk that information. Why do we chunk that information? I assure you that chunking is not a term that I have created. This is an industry standard thing now in AI. So you have a 500-page document, and you have 300 words on each of those pages. If you're trying to search for information within those documents, it can be very hard. You also have performance issues. So what we do is we break that information in various ways using chunking. And then what we do is we create semantic relationships between those chunks, meaning that when you ask a question, you get the answer, the right answer, back to the question that you've asked. And because we've created the semantic links, you understand the intent of the query and therefore provide the answer. Going back to my river bank and financial bank, that's what's happening there. Now, in addition, vector search. Now, I'm sorry, Microsoft. Vector search is not new, but Microsoft have done a fabulous job of integrating that into their products. And for those who do not know what vector search is where you have a search query that is a text-based search, and it's turned into numeric search. The end user definitely does not see that. It goes on in the background. Well, why does that matter and why does that help? We're turning a textual-based search into numeric search, and you can relate numbers easier than you can with words. That enables you to get a more semantic-like experience and a better answer to what you're actually asking. That's an extremely high-level description of what vectorization is. We can go into that later. I could talk about it till the cows come home, but I've only got 15 minutes, so we will not. And then over on the right-hand side, what we have here is Smart Hub, and Steve's going to talk about this in a little while. This is the ability to surface that information in a user interface. Atlas. You'd have to be living on the moon not to have heard of Copilot. It's this thing that, again, Microsoft have brought to the table. It's really exciting. I absolutely love it. I think it's fabulous. How we help here is the information doesn't just live in a Microsoft world. You have applications, Stuart, you've got iManage, you've got other tax systems, all of those good applications. But if you could only search in the Microsoft 365 sphere, then you're not getting a holistic view of all of your content. So we can take that content, we can add that information into the Microsoft graph, and then that is enriched by the semantic index, and you can perform Copilot-like actions over the top of that. Summarization, synchronization, asking questions of your content, all of that good stuff, not just on the M365 sphere content, but on any content using the connectors that are available out there. There are also other ways to enrich the information that you have in Copilot. That's plugins. We can talk about that later on if you so wish. AI is an investment. Stuart and Gabriel have talked about the large language model, but it's about, you wouldn't have a car without an engine, and a large language model is part of that engine, is part of the building of the car. What you need is all of the pieces. So using your data, authoritative content sources, do not pick everything up and dump it into a search engine and hope that you're going to get the right results, because that's not what's going to happen. But if you ground your content and the responses that you get, retrieval augmented generation, with the information from the large language model, you're going to get a better experience. And there's many pieces of the parts of the solution that makes up your car. He's going to talk about this with Atlas. We work really well together. And what I'd like to now talk about is what happens with Upland BA Insight and Atlas together. So we've talked about connectivity. You have all of that information in those different applications. We use our connectors to add that information into a search index or indices. Really is up to you. I've talked about two today, the Microsoft Graph or Microsoft Search, and also Azure AI Search. As we add that information into the index, we use auto-classify to enrich that information. You enrich that information in a couple of ways. Integration with large language models, integration with natural language processing, with machine learning. And you won't believe this, but rules-based tagging using taxonomies and ontologies, there's still a need for that within search. Why? Because you can have the best large language model in the world, you could use the best technology around machine learning in the world, but no engine knows your data better than you do. You will have acronyms, organizational terminology and jargon within your organization that you know that means something to your people, your teams, but it doesn't mean anything to a large language model. So you still need to have that human in the loop to check and tag that content. And then once we've got that information in the search engine, then we have Smart Hub for Atlas that sits over the top of that. A really powerful tool that brings all of that information together and enables you to search for that information in the Atlas UI. Here are a list of our connectors. We do have 97. I would love to make 98, 99, and 100. I do not make a connector just for the sake of making a connector. There has to be a business reason or a market need to do it. These connectors are products that they're off the shelf, and we configure them to meet your needs in your environment. If there's a need to build a new connector, then we can do it if there's an API available and technical documentation. But if there isn't, then we can use our database connector to build a generic connector for your in-house built applications. Very importantly, the security of those or what happens at the application level is indexed into the index. Therefore, we never expose any information that is shouldn't be available to people within your organization. But this is all great. This is all Jason speaking theoretically. But have we ever done this? Yes, we have. And does it actually make sense in practice? Yes, it does. And can we see this in action? Absolutely, we can. I'm going to pass to Steve now.
So yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a quick 10, 15 minute where we're actually going to demonstrate in a real environment. Well, it's a demonstration environment, but it is a real environment. Some of the concepts that have been discussed today and some of the capabilities that we've got within the product. So for those of you that are not familiar with Atlas, Atlas is we call it an intelligent knowledge platform. It has a broad set of capabilities. Clients use it as their primary intranet. Clients use it for their collaboration capabilities when working on bids and projects. But increasingly, and this is very much an increasing focus of ours, clients use it as their primary knowledge management capability. So this is just our example demonstration platform here. You can see I'm in Teams inside of a browser. I would normally be in my Teams desktop environment when I'm accessing Atlas. And what I'm going to touch on some of the concepts that Gabriel touched on earlier on when it comes to actually still using search. Yep. So really important, Jason mentioned this, search in the current understanding of how you use search is not dead. Yeah. There is a certain demographic, me included, that has been brought up, using search in a certain way, very familiar. It's still my go-to place to use. I'm not going to stop using that anytime soon. There's some great new stuff coming along, which we're going to look at in this demonstration. But I think it's really important that we understand that these two things will now live side by side, and you'll develop certain use cases that will use one more than the other, depending on the business value you can generate from those tools. So where I'm going to start today, this is just an example company. We call it Bilco in our Atlas demo. But I'm a user. I need to find a certain document. There might be a data protection issue that I've come across. And I'm sitting inside of Teams here via Viva Connections in this particular instance. And we have the Atlas search bar always with us. Now, this is a configurable interface here. So I've got available here a whole number of scopes, too many. Yep, normally this is shrunk down. But I'm looking for a piece of knowledge. So in this case here, I'm looking for a document that relates to data protection. So I'm going to type in data protection and hit return. So imagine doing this in your organization, whether this is in your intranet, whether it's in your knowledge management system, your DMS. I'm going to get back a set of results. In this case, I've got 106. In your organization, this could be 10,006. Yeah, it's a very common set of words. I haven't put them in quotes. I haven't done anything special. I've just searched for data protection. So one of the really important things here, and ignoring the DMS topics and other AI processed information that we've got, I'm not going to go into that now, is within Atlas, we have workspaces, as we call them, that are known as knowledge bases. And these knowledge bases are authoritative places where you hold content, typically curated content. So this is the top of the pyramid that Gabriel mentioned earlier. Yeah, these are our policies, our procedures, our processes. This is digital assets that we use when we're working on bids, etc. Now, the key thing with this is that when this information lands inside of these knowledge bases in Atlas, it goes through a grading system that can either be automated or be manually managed by a KM team, for example. But what you can do within the Atlas search experience here, we're using the term gold graded. You can use whatever terminology you like. This could be official or curated. If I now just push that one button, it will automatically now bring back the authoritative information that relates to data protection that we have available in our official sources. Yeah, so from here now, I've now taken those 106 results down, two results, which in this instance are my policy, procedure, or process. And then from here, I'm sat inside of a Microsoft environment. I can now do something with them. I can open it, share them, link to it. So this is just a very simple example of how we can take authoritative data in a standard out-of-the-box search experience and deliver very quick results for your users when they're looking for information. So again, we've got a whole demographic that is very familiar with that way of working, very familiar with using search boxes, maybe familiar with the use of verticals and filtering information. And these filters here, this is the enrichment that Gabriel and Stuart alluded to when it comes to metadata. So when this information lands inside of Atlas, we have a very rich metadata model that enables it to be automatically tagged with things like location or subject or an entity, which could be a customer code, could be a partner code, could be a supplier code, et cetera, et cetera. Those filters then power search even more. We're just having this very simple. The other important thing, though, today is that that's one mode of working. But as has been alluded to, what about information that you actually don't know is out there, but that may be relevant to a role or a task that we're actually working? So I'm going to switch gears a bit now. Let's go down to a Teams team here. So in this particular case, I might be an internal lawyer, and we're working inside of Teams, and within Teams, this is the Atlas experience that then lands for me. Yep. So note I'm in my general channel here working on this matter, and I'm just going to expand this. This is an example of what we call a templated workspace. So basically, when an internal legal team are working on a new matter, they spin up this workspace, and everything then arrives automatically into this place of work. Because when this matter was built, it got tagged. Yep. It had a client tag applied to it. It had a matter code applied to it. It might have a legal or tax subject applied to it when it was first created. And from that creation point, what then happens, using, in this case, the BA Insight Smart Hub, which Atlas is sitting on top of, it enables us to automatically suck in information from any of the source systems. Now, this particular instance here, I've only got 3 connections wired up. I've got an iManage repository, I've got a SQL database, and I've got Atlas. The key thing now is all of this information is just sucked in. This is a very simple card here. This is coming in dynamically from the iManage source system for the DMS. And then we've got documents down here that are coming from database platforms, from SharePoint platforms, and from within iManage. So here I've got, a standard set of buttons here, which enable the user to very easily and very simply then filter out information just by clicking the button, or you can just use the standard search box here. So, I might type in Lasker. So the Bank of Lasker is a client of ours that we might be working on in respect to this legal matter. And you'll see here now I've got a whole pile of results that are being filtered through here. And what you can then do in any of these items, you can simply open up what is another BA Insight tool, in this case called Smart Preview, which will then automatically highlight the search items that you put in the search. And then from within this particular document itself, I can carry on searching. Now, I'm not going to go through too much of that now. But the important thing here is, as a user, I've landed in my Teams area where I'm working on this matter, and all of the information I need about that client and that matter is just there, including information that I may never have seen before. And then I've got the easy filtering capability to filter it out by subject, to filter it out by relevant location, if this client is working over multiple jurisdictions, for example, and it's all just available to me in a template work. And the key thing here as well is that, from within this experience, I can carry on doing other searches.
Just prove the fact that there are actually iManage documents. Maybe scroll.
Oh, sorry, they're all labeled. Oh, here you go. So here's iManage content in here as well. And if I click on that, then it will just take me into the iManage system itself directly.
Anyone's got any questions?
Okay, so
where does the actual documentation reside then? Is it coming from the source? Is it being put into some form of caching area or
no? So the preview that I just pushed on here. So if I hit this preview button here, okay, so this is actually now coming from the index itself, because when the information was in, and there are different ways of whether you do this dynamically on the fly or whether you cache it within the index for the preview. That's how the preview works. But if I click on it, it will actually open up the source document itself from within, in this case, iManage as the relevant, providing you have security to see exactly that. Yep. Okay. So again, that's a very simple example here. But all I was going to go on to say is that all of the other features, though, are available to me from within this interface. So that data protection example that I just did, let's just do it again. I'm working on this bid, but there's somebody actually wants to understand part of our data protection policy when we're responding to a legal matter or whatever it may be. So again, I'll just do the same thing here. In this case, I've just hit the all button. I haven't actually specified that I'm looking for knowledge, in this case in particular. I'll just do it all. And again, you're going to see a similar example that comes back here. Once it wakes up, I hit the gold graded again. I get my 3 responses. This is the process that I want. I copy a link from that file. Right, so the key thing to remember, though, I'm still in my Teams channel. I haven't actually gone anywhere. I haven't system hopped anywhere. I can then just drop that link directly into first conversation of the day into my Teams chat. And that's then available for all the members of that team working on that matter. The key thing is I haven't got it. I'm still in my general channel.
So could you push documents into iManage? So if you drop a document into the chat, would it?
Not in here, not currently. That would require an integration directly into the back end of iManage. We don't do that.
We just work in teams, I suppose.
Well, we're working with a US law firm right now that are just on the cusp, hasn't formally been signed off, but just on the cusp now. They've already moved all of their precedent data out of iManage and have already moved that into Atlas and Teams. but on the customer of actually hitting, this is not going to be a short-term thing. This is probably a 2 to 3 year plan. I've actually started to migrate up into SharePoint. There's a whole host of other reasons. If any of you working for law firms, I know there are a few clients here, getting lawyers to agree to that decision, I think. Okay, so the key thing, especially coming back to some of the things that was said earlier, is that I'm in one place. I haven't lost my focus. I'm working on this team. I'm working on this particular legal matter, but I've now got all of the search experience available where I can then utilize that data and do something. And again, I've just got a very simple example just to close this off here. So I should have refreshed before the demo. What? I won't bother showing you. I was going to show you a Salesforce integration as well, but just know that happens. Just what was out? Okay.
Well, Steve, you're in Teams.
Yep.
Show it in SharePoint Online. There's still
absolutely. Yep. So for those of you that are not using Teams, this experience can be delivered through SharePoint itself. So one of the concepts we have within Atlas is building out these hubs, the line of business hubs for ways of working. So you might have a bid hub, you might have a latter hub, mediation, lease hub, depending on the nature of your firm. And again, we work with all of the out-of-the-box tools within Microsoft, but very simply here, this might be an example of how the business development team works when you're looking to win an business part with a new client. And the idea of this is it will automatically just bring content to me in the context of where I'm working. So in this case here, this opportunity data here is coming dynamically straight out of Salesforce. And the reason that works is that when this workspace was created, it was tagged, and it was tagged with the CRM code from Salesforce. That dynamic in this case. So CRM record in Salesforce creates a tag inside of Atlas. That tag is then applied to the working area when it gets created, and then hey, presto, Smart Hub just delivers everything in one place that now relates to it.
Back in this case, I think, Steve, this one was created from sales.
Correct. Yep. And again, then all of the information, documentation, et cetera, arrives. So that's search. Yeah. So we've got the ability to search, the ability to have very highly curated gold standard materials automatically delivered. So this is your high quality. Your ISO 27001 policies and procedures, your EMS procedures, whatever they may be. Yeah. Typically something where a subject matter expert or a knowledge manager, depending on the organization, has actually done some work to say, yes, this is the standard for whatever it may be.
We theoretically, Steve, say this is the best bid we've ever done. That's gold standard.
Exactly that. Yep. And latest version, yeah, as importantly. But also, templates is where it's heavily used. How many people copy templates? They waste so much time trying to find the template in the first place. Once they found it, they copy it to the OneDrive. Yeah. Templates get updated. So, and especially if this might be an NDA, it could be anything. Yeah. You need to ensure that people are using the current version. So again, that would be an example of gold standard information. You just search template, filter subject, gold standard. That is the template for whatever. Yeah.
Doing it via SharePoint instead of Teams.
I want to see it, Smash.
Yeah, it's absolutely good. Those who are not operating.
So, yeah, this is I'm now in SharePoint, making SharePoint in my browser. So those same capabilities, those hubs that we were looking at before, if I'm working in the business development, say, example, I get exactly the same experience. I just don't have the collaborative capabilities that are obviously available to me within Teams experience. So, if I navigate down to that Paris trading floor bid we just did inside of Teams, now I'm still in that workspace. So all of that information will now flow in from Salesforce, et cetera, but I'm now just in a native SharePoint experience. Importantly, this is also native to your mobile as well. So if you're invested in the Teams app or the SharePoint app, you can also get access to all of this information when you're out and about.
Question, sorry. If I'm in a document, I'm creating a document, and I want to pull through precedents, clauses, etc.
Yep.
Have you got anything that can start to do?
No. Yeah, that probably isn't going to be where we take Atlas. Two reasons for that. There are some big vendors out there that are already. I'm sure there comes some supporters who are investing a lot of money in these sorts of technology. And again, it is a very, very specific use case in a very specific office tool. As I say, our focus really is much more on the collaborative side, and where knowledge is a really key part of that collaboration experience. And also, it's avoided, but also don't forget the big beast in the room, which is Microsoft.
are also investing heavily in those sorts of capabilities. I'm sure Copilot will be a very different experience in 18 months' time.
Okay, so what we have now, I'm just going to go into a different team, just a slightly different experience here. I use the term business development quite a lot. Imagine working in a business development team, and we've got a new opportunity to win a new piece of business. Yeah. So again, imagine this team environment is just spun up for me. It's been tagged with declined code. It's been tagged with an RFP number, whatever it may be. Again, I'm just going to expand this out. And as part of the process, I might be new to the business development team, and somebody might have asked me to create a summary of the RFP list. Now, depending on your business RFPs, I think the one we got was from Southern Firm. I think it was 128 pages. Yeah. So there's a bit of reading that needs to be done. I'm not using that example here. But imagine having, a knowledge collection for the business development team. Yeah, but that knowledge collection has all of the curated information you need. You need your insurance, you need policies and procedures available to you to be able to answer questions. You also, though, have your gold standard responses. You've created gold standard FAQs come in, and you've got that information available to you. You might even then have a situation where you drop the current RFP into that knowledge collection. You can actually start asking questions of that along with other sorts of information. So, as Gabriel's mentioned, we're using, under the hood, we're using Azure OpenAI. Yeah, that's the technology that we're built on. If you are able to see the Atlas AI assistant and have access to the knowledge collection, you get this little icon here. And this is the UI, but the UI is the same. But I'm going to take a simple scenario here. I'm going to take this record here, this number. So I've been asked to create a summary of the RFP. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go into generate mode here. I'm going to say create a summary of RFP with no more than 250 words. Spoiling. We're going to follow it. And this is when we're going to start talking. It takes a little while, but it's a lot faster than me trying to do it manually. It's the most important. So effectively, what we're now doing, we're taking that prompt. What is actually happening technically, we have a system prompt set up as well, which is aligned with this knowledge collection, which is going to be wrapped around it. So that is effectively the tone of words that I'm going to apply. But it also sets some rules. Yeah. So in this particular system prompt, we have told it to never give me an answer unless the information you're found to provide that answer is within the knowledge collection. So we're grounding it on that data. Don't go and make it up. Yeah. Don't hallucinate, and don't go to the web or don't go to your knowledge to try and give me the answer. Yeah. Go to my knowledge. Yeah. So what this is now doing, this is now baked, as you can see. Yeah, I'm not actually reading it. I'm going to assume that this is correct for now. Yeah, as this goes through. But as it goes through, it will also provide citations, so on and so forth for the user. And effectively here, what you can see in this UI, you can see my request limit here. So this is the first one I'm running today in this particular demo. It's now the 1st of February. That gets reset at the end of each month. This is really important. I will re-stress what Gabriel said earlier. Very important. Yeah, very. This is customer, right? So very important that you understand how the Azure pricing model works, how you manage the number of prompts that get in, how you manage the size of the prompt. Yeah, and these prices are changing dramatically. Microsoft announced some great new prices only last week before, I think it was, where again the prices are coming down a lot, especially for some of the older 3.5 turbo. You thought you'd never say that. Anyway. And it's really important that you understand how those costs are wired out, because this is a pay-as-you-go. But the really important thing, we've had a number of conversations over the last month with people where I'm sure a number of you in the room, when the $30 per month Copilot price was announced, there was a bit of an intake of breath. Yeah. And people thought, wow, that's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. If you're a 10,000 person firm, the key thing is, here, this is about determining the use cases in your business that are going to generate value from these tools. So if I provide this tool to a member of Stuart's team, they're performing very high value work. Yeah. I might say, Stuart, this particular use case using this particular model is actually going to cost you £120 per user per month. 4 times the price of Copilot. That might be buttons though, if Stuart's team is able to generate a value of that, which is hundreds times X of that number. Simply though, you may say, well, Bob in accounts wants to use this to be able to query finance policies. Well, Bob Accounts can use Search, or he can use GPT 3.5 Turbo, and he can have a cost of $5. So it's really important you start thinking about these different value use cases within the business, then how you'll tune or refine your models to use what is a actually a consumption service that has dollars. But again, this is generating an answer for me. It'll bring out citations. So here it's actually finding this Highland Insurance request for proposal document as the source of information, which you can grab it to provide the answer. And again, one of the things I can do here, for those of you that are using SharePoint or Teams, as a user now, I can like this, I can dislike it. So if I think it's going to be the incorrect answer, I can give feedback directly to this as to why it was irrelevant or not, or I could have given the correct answer. But what I can also do directly from here, I can just paste that response straight into the page. Yeah. So the other team members now that are coming to this team area for the first time have actually got an RFP. It hasn't put the headers in actually, but I'll have a look at that later. Can actually now just see an immediate summary of the RFP without necessarily opening up this 120-page document. It's just there and available, and then I just republish that, and that's now a published piece of information that now the homepage for that bid.
Steve, quick question, couple of quick questions. Your thumbs up and thumbs down. I like the way that you've got a less subjective option in there, because thumbs up, thumbs down sometimes can be I'm all right now, but you've got some wording in there you can feedback. Where does that feedback go to, and what do you do with that?
Yeah, so very important. So everything I've just done is logged. Yep. So the Atlas product sits in an Azure resource group, and part of that there is a SQL environment in there. We're actually logging all of the analytics of usage. We're logging all of the prompts. We're logging all of the responses. We're logging all of the like, dislike, the reason for disliking, etc., etc. All of that is being logged. Now we don't have it available today. Well, there's a very simple reporting requirement today that basically outputs a CSV. All for today won't be fine when I've got 10,000 users making 1 million requests. Yep. So later on in this year, there's going to be a full analytics engine, which is being delivered alongside this as well. So you can actually start analysing the usage of AI, the value that you're getting from it. It also enables you to log all of the tokens, so a technical cost level. If a prompt equals a number of tokens equals a number of dollars, and all of that analysis will also reside within the analytics. Yeah. So again, you'll be able to analyse how different teams are using AI, foster that AI across those teams, and then you'll be able to start looking at some subjective of how much value is being generated from that. So that was a very quick demo. I can fire in more questions. I can fire in the $6 million insurance question in there, et cetera, if you want to see more. But the assistant itself is a very straightforward end user tool. What we also do, I should have added this in actually, within this requirement here, as I'm writing this response away, I haven't got any tokens in here, but we enrich this with metadata as well from the source system. So I'll actually enrich it with other information about this workspace. So I'll add such, et cetera, to further enrich the experience.
And can you use that metadata to tune prompt engineering then?
It does exactly that. Effectively, it fires it into the prompt form. Yeah, so it gives further context to the user.
Just highlights how important the metadata is.
Correct. Yeah. And the key thing is, and I know we've got some legal clients in the room. Metadata it is a tricky one. But what we do with Atlas, and certainly what we do with some of the premium products like Shipment Premium, is try and automate that process as far as possible. So again, if I'm working on a bid, I just drag those 50 documents out of Outlook, drag them straight into the bid area. It gets tagged with a subject, a client code, a bid code, an activity code.
Yes, I mean, I guess that where we are, the vision, the challenge that I discussed, we've been working for quite a while on this content repository kind of element of preparedness for AI. And it has been quite a lift. Some of these questions that were coming up during the session around how do you tag data if you've never really bothered to do that before? How do you connect up all these different sources? How do you go into things like iManage? With our iManage, we've got a very complex integration environment with lots of apps that do push directly into iManage. How do you kind of get just to the position where you kind of solved, right? We're relatively happy with our connectors, with our tagging strategy, with our curation, with our security and permission trimming. And then, before you even start to think about applying generative AI over the top of it. So we've been on quite a long journey already. We're also to some extent, we're conscious that things are shifting a bit. We're not exactly sure. Once we've got the content repository, how do we layer the generative AI over the top? Do we push everything via Copilot? Is that the answer? Do we try and push it into the AI assistant? Is that where we're going? We are about to start a pilot of the AI assistant, and we're going to run Copilot and the AI assistant head to head. We work with another third party who specialize in the kind of legislative content. We're not really sure how we surface all of it yet, so we're deliberately going to keep our options open. But I guess in terms of where we go, where we're going next, and kind of how we see this, how we see this developing, we're getting close to having that unified search over the content repository. So we're starting to turn our minds to how do we apply generative AI to that? How do we start to go further than search and start to use things like the AI assistant, and then from there, I guess there's all the kind of nuts and bolts that we have to do to kind of land this in our business. We've done a pilot. We've rolled this out to about 100 users. Next, we're going out to about 1,000 users. We're very conscious of the cost point. I mentioned there's kind of two parts to our business: compliance, advisory. Realistically, at the moment, this is much more focused on our advisory business. The compliance professionals more in the $5 range than the 120 for now. But definitely the highest priority area is to kind of test out the AI system is going to be on the advisory parts of the business. I think where it gets really interesting for us next is the way we kind of see the journey going is make headway on solving the content issue. AI is an overlay for internal enablement. And once we're confident that we've done both of those things and they're working well, we start to turn our minds to, does this allow us to develop entirely new business models that we don't have today? Can we really be a content company? I.e., can we sell our content without having people in the middle of that? And provided the internal testing goes well, we can see lots of different paths to doing that. So one of the things we're looking at the moment, I think Copilot plugins were mentioned in I think Jason's session. So one of the things we're working on with a large oil and gas client at the moment is in an oil and gas environment, a surprising number of the tax decisions are actually made by people who are on an oil rig or who are in a very remote location receiving invoices and deciding how they should be treated for tax purposes. This company runs a very large, effectively a tax help desk internally within their organization, so that when someone says a helicopter's just landed with $1 million drill bit, where do I code that to in the finance system? They get the right answer. It's not massively value add work for them. We're working with them on, can we deploy a Copilot plugin where we don't have to solve all of the tax content? I think what we're building together with Microsoft and ClearPeople is like a general intelligence for tax, hopefully. You can ask it any question. This is saying, well, there's subsets of the content that are already super useful. So indirect tax rates, withholdings tax rates, customs codes and classifications. We can grab a subset of that content, whether it's as a knowledge base or a knowledge collection or otherwise, and we can package that up as a Copilot plugin so that you move away from the idea of having to run a help desk, and actually you have a really good internal tool that organization can use to provide that same level of assurance over their business. And to us, that then becomes we're monetizing our content in a way that moves away from the traditional professional services model of every time you grow the top line, you have to add 10, 20 people. So that becomes that becomes quite exciting. The other area that we're looking at very tentatively is kind of flipping the idea of generative AI to create content and actually using it as a review tool. So if we've got all this trusted content, I think we talked about precedent and things like that. And one of those questions, what we started experimenting with is, well, can we then feed in advice that a human's drafted and have the AI go away and look at all the different contributors to that tax position and say, well, actually, this case has been separated from that body of case law. This bit of legislation is actually subject to change in 2 months. There's something tabled to update that. and start to almost use it as a like a real an actual co-pilot for a tax advisor, someone who's kind of sitting in the right hand seat, monitoring what you're doing and saying, hey, looks like you're going a bit wrong here. Maybe you want to kind of course correct. And then I think the final thing, getting back to my obsession with Clippy for tax, is what we're really keen to do is to the law firms here, you'll know that a surprising amount of time in a deal situation or in a lot of advisory situations goes into drawing boxes and moving them around in PowerPoint. We've got tools that automate that part of the process. For us, the dream is if you can combine the deal structuring and the kind of steps preparation with this body of content. So we start drawing out steps papers, and between Atlas, between the AI tools, and between that steps paper tool, kind of automatically starting to annotate the tax advice in real time, and getting to a world where actually we can sit down with the client and say, here's your current proposed structure, here's our analysis of the tax consequences, let's start moving things around and start to see in real time what those changes might look like and how we might model that out. That's really getting into, to me, the kind of the tax advice of the future. We put on our Minority Report gloves and start moving the company around on screen to optimize it from a tax perspective. So I think really the summary of that is we can see a huge number of really amazing, kind of groundbreaking things that we could do with our business with all of this technology. It's I just keep coming back to it though, when now within tax and legal, when people ask me what our AI strategy is, I say we don't have one. We have a content strategy, and this is what it's all built around. Once we've got that right, we've got that foundation. That's what we're going to build off to do all of these other super exciting things. But I think I was meant to be time bound to 6 to 18 months. Some of those things are probably years off. But over the next 6 to 18 months, the kind of steps on the road to get there. So really prove out, this is this kind of next pilot where we roll out to 1,000 users is the first time that we're working with Jason, the BA Insights team, to build in those extra sources of content, trial out the AI assistant, work out what this looks like if we integrate it with Copilot, start to get every tax professional in our business using generative AI. We've got a kind of a safe version of GPT internally that we use, so that people start to understand the pitfalls, the risks of hallucination, how you identify when an AI might be stepping outside of its zone of competence, even though it won't hesitate and stumble over its words in the same way it would if you grilled a person. It's all of those kind of basics. So we're still very much at the building blocks phase and consolidate the work we've done so far. But I think it's hopefully, I keep telling people it's going to be like a hockey stick. We get the building blocks in place and we'll start to really get towards, it might take us 4 years to go from where we were previously to trusted content repository, surfaced through Copilot or AI assistant. But from there to real-time tax structuring might be only 6 months, because actually, to the questions before, the big lift for us has been massive content that we've managed entirely in a model that assumes there's a person in the middle going, that's from 1996, not 2023. Ignore that precedent, to a world where actually all of that's driven through labeling, metadata, and auto curation effectively.
Question for you: you've got your content journey and your AI journey and new technology, but what we're finding in our journey is one of the toughest blocks that we're trying to get over is changing the culture of the firm.
Oh.
If that's a big pain point in your strategy, or
so you can never put too much emphasis on change management, can you? My favorite story about this is ever since I've been at KPMG, so I started as a graduate 13 or so years ago. Everyone's always complained about doing their timesheets and how much the pain timesheets are. And in the accountancy magazines, industry jobs advertise and say no timesheets, because that's such a big factor in getting people to move. We deployed a system that looked through your calendar and automated population of your timesheet So I was like, I'm going to be carried out of the building on people's shoulders. Like I fixed the biggest issue that we have as a firm. It was about 18% adoption in the first 6 to 9 months of running that tool, and it was just because people didn't want to do something new. They were both complaining about doing their timesheet and refusing to adopt the solution in the same sentence. So yeah, change management super difficult. With tax people, naturally conservative, very difficult as well. The other kind of example I always go to is we worked with another company that does kind of predictors based on case law, and we built out a tool that can predict very accurately if someone will be classified as self-employed or employed, depending on all the facts and circumstances of their job. Rolling that out to the employee worker tax team, it's really interesting. They immediately go to a kind of a very tax professional, quite an old school kind of testing mindset. They put in something they know the answer to, and then they look at the answer and they were kind of feeding back, well, it's wrong because it's only changed the outcome by 2% either way if the organization provides the person with a uniform versus they don't. And I'm a super clever tax advisor, and I know that's a much bigger deal than the software's telling me. But actually the mindset shift is that's not really how AI works. What this is doing is statistical analysis of all the cases that have ever been litigated on this topic, looking at the facts and comparing that to the outcome and working out how important it is. So in your, tax advisor mind and in your experience, you might say provision of a uniform is incredibly important. The tool isn't thinking about it. It's statistically coming up with all the other cases and going, no, it's, you might think that, judges don't. Not as big a deal as you think. And actually getting people to go on that journey was really difficult. The way we found to crack it is we have to bring people in as early as possible. So we didn't kind of build that in isolation and then kind of go, hey, team, build your shiny tool. We brought them right in on the ground, introduced them to the firm that we're going to be building it, let them work with them on the journey, input their knowledge, and also kind of educate them on how the tool was working. And that was quite helpful. It's the same thing with that we're doing with Atlas. So we did a 100 user pilot, but we're also now showing it to as many people as possible in advance of it kind of becoming accessible to them in a few months time. No pressure to use it at first. Hopefully build some good vibes around, people have a good story and it starts to spread. So we're taking quite a gently approach, not forcing it on people. But it is it is quite difficult getting them to trust in the system, getting them to kind of remove that mental blocker is super challenging. It's just exposure and letting people go somewhat at their own pace has been the thing that's helped the most so far.
Sure. You had any issues with clients coming back and telling you they do not want their data used in any LLM?
We've had that issue with clients, and also with some of the people we license content from have told us they don't want their data, even sometimes comes from a place of not very good knowledge, but we've had even some of our content providers have said, even if it's RAG, even if it's retrieval, augmented generation, it's not actually amending the base model. They still said, no, it's not going anywhere. The content's not going anywhere near a model like that. And some have even gone further and said any form of AI, which is quite tricky. When you think about things like enterprise search or cognitive search or enterprise search now, wrong way around. AI search, sorry, that's AI, and it's not training any. We're not stealing their content in any way. So again, that's been a kind of an education journey. We do have clients, and the 97% statistic. I've spoken to a client. They work for head of tax for a French luxury goods company. Is the best way of describing it. French luxury goods company. They make perfumes and things like that, as well as other stuff. And they have taken a blanket position as an organization. The CEO commissioned a study and then went, there will be no AI at our organization. And we won't let suppliers use it. And that's quite a tricky position that's quite a tricky position to take, because at a certain point, there's going to be stuff being used in the back. You're going to rule yourself out of accessing certain services. Another way of looking at it is, if we took that position as an organization, and everyone who joined from PwC or EY or Deloitte went, I had this great research tool when I was at my previous firm, it's rubbish here. Everything takes me 10 times as long. They're probably going to go back. But no, we have we've had providers of data tell us that we can't do it. So we've opened up alternative discussions with other providers who are more amenable to it and kind of see the future the way that we do. We've got clients who say it. The more frequent client challenge has been, where's the data processed, stuff like that. That's also something we're really trying to navigate at the moment. So I think in our Copilot rollout, we're having to say that the users who have Copilot can't use it if they're traveling on business outside of the UK, because then the data gets processed outside the UK, and we're not comfortable with that yet. So when I say we're taking this 4 years and then hopefully the hockey stick, it's partly just solving stuff like this.
You come across issues with sentiment analysis?
In what sense?
Just very scratching the surface, but one of the first things one of my team did was actually said, does Shane like Gabriel in email?
Yeah. So I mean, so that could, there's a big user education piece around what's appropriate use of a tool like that. So actually, that's a challenge. That was actually a challenge that we came across about probably first came across about a decade ago, because without getting too into kind of tax technical, one of the elements that affects where you're taxed around the world is where your profits arise, where your decision makers are, essentially where the value is created in your organization. And we had a tool that at the time was quite innovative, that would effectively do email traffic analysis, and then it would say, 400 emails a day go to London with the subject of please approve, and 400 come back the other way to the outlying organizations saying approved, and therefore the decisions are clearly made in London. You can demonstrate that to the tax authority, substantiate your tax position. But if you're doing that with someone's emails, you find out who's corresponding most frequently and stuff, and then you find out that two people in the whatever office sending a lot of emails out of hours, and you discover they're having an affair. You know that information now. You can't unknow it, and suddenly you're, I wish I didn't, because now that's something I could accidentally disclose, and you're in lots of trouble. So we started even back then, even like 10 years ago, started to be quite prescriptive around where you are using these types of data tools, rules of the road, information, almost sensitivity training around information security. So I haven't heard anyone asking, does this person like that person? Yeah, I think Richard from Microsoft did once when he was demonstrating Copilot to us for the first time in front of the whole tax leadership team. My boss and their boss say, was Stuart engaged in this meeting? And asked Copilot. Luckily it said yeah. But I think that's just for us. Again, the slow burn is we're still feeling out the rules of the road and how we train people to safely use technology like this. You could massive issues. And again, how you look for stuff. We've had people kind of look for the answer to independence or risk questions and find the answer to the tests that we set for people to verify they've done the training. So yeah, it's a big mindset shift.
Goes to the security model though as well, doesn't it? Where the technology is exposing perhaps things and not done internally, like you've not set your security.
Yeah. Well, it's again, it's a similar time. We've moved our knowledge management from assuming there's a human in the middle to assuming it's a machine. It's the same thing. The security around the answers to the independence verification tests, not protected. They're just somewhere where no one else would look. 400 layers deep in a shared drive. But if the tool's searching everywhere at once, then it brings that back.
Got a chance now to ask a few questions. It's very much about Copilot, and should the answer just be Copilot, or is the world more nuanced than that? It's a Microsoft.
I think it's more nuanced. Yeah. I think it's been great actually to kind of see that the real spirit of partnership with customer story, how it's actually being used, really valuable. But then seeing how Atlas is solving some real world problems. And actually, I liked, Stuart, what you had to begin with. I did make a note of it because I think it actually grounds the conversation really well. In terms of you had the T&L AI strategy is a content, not technology strategy. I think that's actually very important. We've got a real opportunity with AI, generative AI, to really rethink so many things. But it's not just that we want to play with impressive technology. There's some real problems that we've for years been trying to solve, and actually AI is now a way that's really accelerating that. And so to see how the companies are coming together to actually solve this, the connectors that you're able to bring to further accelerate this is amazing. And so when you talk about 12, 18 months, maybe a few years away, it might be a bit quicker than that, because actually that's what we've seen. I don't think many of us would have thought we'd get to this point 18 months ago. So we're seeing this real innovation coming through. And is it just a Copilot? No. Obviously M365 Copilot, there's a lot that is offering. But I think where you're able to do more is really understand the domain and an industry and complement what's possible with Copilot, and have Atlas AI Assistant doing more than the M365 Copilot is going to be doing. And that idea of being able to have that kind of knowledge collated, that is going to be really, really powerful and complement what Copilot is also doing.
We know what Stuart's planning to do in the next 12 to 18 months. Why don't you give us an insight into what Copilot might do? Well,
I don't know that. I know as much as you do.
Looking ahead, I mean, what would your biggest advice be to organizations? Here, what would you say to organizations?
I think some of it's already been touched on. There's a piece around readiness. That we had a slide, I think, Gabriel, you presented, in terms of you go from data through to knowledge, and some of that might need us to look at what state is our data actually in. Some things we might be able to use AI and tools to help us get to knowledge. Some things, if we're not in that position yet, we might need to actually think about that. And then the change management journey. How are we positioning this to our organization? It is powerful tech. There will be a bit of resistance to it. No one likes to change unless they really understand the value of it. Maybe, weirdly, for the first time in a long time, there is actual genuine excitement around an enterprise tool with M365 Copilot. And I'm not sure the last time there was genuine excitement. That certainly helps, but it's not everyone's going to be okay with using that. So in order to get the power of these tools that you're building, we need to make sure that people are understanding why we're going on this journey. And it's not just about using some cool new tech. That might help, but it's really going to save them time, really deliver impact in the job that they're trying to do. So that's kind of the things that I would be thinking.
I was excited.
Yes.
That's the last time.
Yeah, that's 30-ish, more than 30 years ago, isn't it? Mm-hmm. 25? No, I'm just trying to think, when did Clippy come out? 97?
I'll be... Wow.
We talked about something at some point, and this is not a question for you, but I remember we were talking about the knowledge collections and collections. You saying, at some point, wouldn't it be great if I could use Microsoft Copilot as the front door to these knowledge collections? Plugins, connectors, etc. We've talked about that before. So maybe going a little bit on the tech side here in terms of question, what's the difference between connect and plugin? And do we think, what would be able to deliver something like a knowledge collection in via a plugin using Copilot as the front door and or connector?
I think you actually have a good question. You go.
Yeah, so the difference between a plugin and a connector is as such. A connector takes the content from a business application and indexes it into the graph, and it utilizes something called a semantic index. And you would think, from a business perspective, that you'd use a connector to perform tasks over lots of content. company-wide organization content, application content, those types of things. A plugin is actually calling the content in real time, so there's no indexing of content. It doesn't utilize the semantic index, and you're performing specific actions with specific users on specific sets of content. But the big one is it's really around a federated model, real time, versus indexing model. You put the content into the Microsoft Graph, and you use it accordingly.
I think another good way of differentiating is from a plugin point of view. You will use plugins to have potential interaction with those other third-party systems. So, for example, would be I need to update a service ticket based upon this query, and it will do that dynamically because it effectively has a real-time connection. Okay.
I think that's what was asked over there. You mentioned that where you could actually write back something into online, for example.
Very good. Any questions from the room? Microsoft is here. Someone? License price question.
Can you talk to the importance of Purview in amongst Copilot? So we're trying Copilot. We don't actually enforce Purview there, obviously playing it and trying to understand it. And there has been conflicting conversations about it's a dependency, obviously surfacing information that shouldn't be surfaced, even if it was like a public team and I put something in that team and that perhaps I accidentally didn't. Accidents happen with humans, right? So can you talk to the importance of Purview?
Yeah, I think there's been a few different mentions of it. You mentioned Purview earlier. Actually making sure a lot of the way that the AI works is it's only going to be able to access what me as an individual could access. And you said, right, that the speed and the breadth at which the AI system and the tool is going to be able to go and look at all of the content versus how quickly I could do that. That's where the power really comes from. So knowing that you've actually got the right governance in place and the right ways in which people are using the data and the information is very important. Purview helps make sure that that is then not just followed by a human, but actually the system is also monitoring that the usage of the data and information is being done in the correct way, so that something that is meant to be confidential, is meant to be sensitive, is meant to be kept away from other people is adhered to. Because the AI, if the individual can access it, the AI can, and it's going to return that information which the company might not want. So yeah, Purview is important in that piece. Yes.
You had a lot of clients in here will go, up till now, security through obscurity has been sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a situation where you're using obscurity and people just can't find it, that's not necessarily secure enough. So thinking about permissions is actually really the fundamental step. And Purview helps on top of that. It's one of the things that...
One last question for Stuart, unless someone wants to jump in.
One of the very quick questions about the taxonomy and tagging. Did it take you to get that consistent tag?
I'm not sure we've done that yet. So we started out looking at internal content and a few other sources, and we already had a taxonomy. I'm not sure it was as granular as it's going to need to be in future, but we already had a taxonomy for stuff that we'd created out of our knowledge management teams, and we were able to fit in the HMRC content, some of the news content into that. Now that we're really going out to other providers of content who have much more detailed taxonomies, it's going to need to keep evolving. So I'm not sure we're probably never going to have it done. It's painting the fourth bridge, yeah. And then the more content we've added, the more complex it's become. We did have a foundation that we could start from. I think kind of getting that up and running. I mean, the first pilot we did was 6 months, less than that.
Oh, you had a decent.
Yeah.
I think the point is it's never ending.
Yeah.
And that's not a criticism. Everything changes all of the time. Like your content changes, your taxonomy has to change as well. I look at enterprise search and say it's not a project. It's a business as usual because you're doing it every single day of your life. Maybe not yourself, but your team is. And I'd also say the taxonomy tagging is one way of tagging your content. There are already things out there that can help you get going, and you build on top of that. It's a combination of things, in my opinion. It's not just A, B, or C. And A.
I think the point about being ongoing is really important. And again, when we think about knowledge management skills in our business today are primarily around being able to be really good at technical research. And actually what we need is more akin to content engineering. So we have to hire in or find a whole new skill set from somewhere else, because we had this discussion kind of when we were building our data and analytics team. Our consulting division said, we've got loads of data and analytics people. You should just use our data and analytics people. You don't need that in tax. But what we said was, well, but actually we're not just doing a one-off data and analytics project. We're changing what it means to be a tax professional. You have to be much more data literate. I think we're kind of saying the same thing about content engineering. We don't want someone to come in, do a project to us, and then kind of go away. We need to maintain it for forever, basically. So there'll be an ongoing cost to that.
Say thank you again to our speakers. Really appreciated your time and sharing all your stories, the education and inspiration. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you very much.